Paul Shaffer is one of the most recognized talk show band leaders in television history. Whether you remember him as an original cast member of Saturday Night Live or as the musical band leader and sidekick for David Letterman, Paul's been a regular on late night television for more than 40 years. He is a successful musician, actor, radio host, philanthropist, and author. And today, Paul joins us from his home in Manhattan for an intimate look at his career and to bring us up to speed on what he's been doing since leaving late night television.
There he is.
Hi, Paul. We got you sideways somehow.
What happened? Well, all of a sudden you're sideways.
There we go.
I can fix it easy.
That's better.
Yes. Well, I've always been used to being a little skewed. Anyway.
How you doing, Paul?
I'm great. Nice to see all you guys out in Victoria, BC.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. So one thing I want to say first, right off you know what always blew my mind about you was the fact that you're like a walking musical anthology. Like, well, I used to subscribe to that show you had. What was it called? This Day in Rock or something?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and because every day there was like a tidbit of information that would come through my computer from you, and that was way before I ever met you. And then when I met you, and of course I'm from Sault Ste. Marie, you were originally from Thunder Bay, well, Fort William, I guess, originally.
That's correct.
Before Port Arthur and Fort William became one town.
Yes.
And so and all of a sudden, not only are you like a walking anthology of everything pop, you also knew all the bands in Sault Ste. Marie.
Well, there was a connection to the Sioux and Thunder Bay. And I guess the main connection was a radio announcer and DJ named Dick Peplow. But by the time he got to Thunder Bay, he was known as Dick Wilson.
Okay.
But proud Sioux native.
Is that right?
And he was, he was around when I was 16, 17-ish. He might only have been 20 himself, but he seemed like a huge deal, and also promoted shows in town in the hockey arena, where they would put plywood down on the ice and erect a stage. Yeah. I'm sure you ran into many of those.
Oh, many. Yeah.
And, so through Dick Wilson, we had a regular Saturday night gig. And I don't know, I guess maybe that was the beginning of it, but the bands like the Amen were legendary.
Yeah, well, they actually had song on the radio or two.
Yes. And then, of course, the other big connection was the Vendettas. Vendettas, a Sioux band starring Keith Mackay.
Yeah.
Lead vocals.
With Kensington Market.
Yeah, who went on to do Kensington Market after he left Thunder, but spent a lot of time in Thunder Bay with a band of mostly guys from the Sioux. Bob Yeomans.
Oh, yeah, of course. I didn't know you knew him.
Well, because he was playing drums at that time. A great drummer with Keith Mackay and this band, the Vendettas. And then I guess Bob Yeoman, he got together with the guy, Timmy, I can't remember his last name, from the A-Man, and they had a band. This guy was, I was probably too young to say hello to him when he was in town, but met him much later when I was in Toronto in school. I went to University of Toronto, and then afterwards just started playing around town, gigs, and ran into Bob Yeomans in a pickup band somewhere, and we had all this in common. The legend grows. But this band, the Vendettas, with another legendary guy, Alex Giroux, who was also in Kensington Market on bass, no longer with us, but, wise beyond his years, especially when it came to R&B and the kind of music that I was getting into. These guys turned me on to R&B, really. We're playing songs like Midnight Hour and Hold On, I'm Coming, when they really hadn't reached the radio. Dick Wilson wasn't playing it on the radio yet. Yeah. But we learned this from the Vendettas.
Amazing. Well, what's his name? Gene Martinek from the Kensington Market went on to have quite a producing career.
Yes. And now, Gene played Godspell for me in Toronto, the Toronto company, 1972. This is this company that a lot of us guys and gals talk about, because we're all still friends, but going way back to 72, Martin Short.
And
Gilda, and Andrea Martin.
Yeah.
Eugene Levy.
Yeah.
And Victor Garber, all these people, and on guitar, Gene Martinick, because he had played the Hair. Okay. After Kensington Market was over, he was a guitarist in the Hair, the Broadway show, when it played Toronto. And I was brand new to this. I thought, well, I'll hire Gene Martinick, seems to be interested, and he'll know what he's doing, because I certainly don't know. So he became my guitar player, and we played together for a solid year. And yes, and of course he also produced Bruce Cockburn.
Oh,
Gene Martinick, yes.
That's right.
But he was just getting started, yes. Edward Bear.
Yeah.
For sure, yes. Yeah. Last song, and can you name their first record?
Masquerade.
See,
Masquerade.
I don't know Masquerade, but what about You, Me, and Mexico?
You and Me Down in Mexico. You're right. That was first. It was that one, and then Masquerade. Yeah, it was like the whole song was like this story of the one girl. It's like You and Me Down in Mexico, Masquerade.
That's interesting.
Every song was a lyric about this one girl, and then it's the last song I'll ever write for you, and it was. It's weird.
I got to know those guys. Edward Bear. They were around when I was at U of T, and my good friend Dave Smythe, still one of my best friends, was a roadie for them in Toronto.
Is that right?
And they were, interesting thing about them, I can give you the personnel. They were a trio. Daddy Marks, blues guitarist extraordinaire, Larry Evoy was the name of the singer-drummer,
right?
Who wrote the songs, I think, and then Paul Weldon, an architect who played keyboard.
Yeah, and left-hand bass.
Left-hand bass, and designed album covers too, I think, because he was an architect. But they were a blues. Somehow they managed to be a blues band, except when on record they did the last song. But live in concert, down, 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 down. I woke up this morning, people. And then on record, it's the last song. I don't know how they pulled that off, but they did.
Well, they played my high school as that trio. It was amazing. I mean, that was just after Masquerade. So You and Me Down in Mexico had hit, and Masquerade, and they hadn't hit the stadiums yet, but they were either that or they were doing both. You know how it is. When you're a kid,
you got to do both. You must retain your humility.
Exactly. We got to fill in the gaps, right? Sault Ste. Marie, they might not have had a gig on the way to Thunder Bay, so they stopped in at a high school to make some money, Well,
that's exactly why we got to see the Guess Who so much in Thunder Bay. Yeah. Because at Fort William. Because it was right next to Winnipeg, And
didn't they play there almost every New Year's just before Christmas, I think.
That's the story, yes. And I would be at all of those gigs. And there's the story that Randy likes to tell, of course, is that they would be broke, which they were all the time, because their gigs were like $500 at that time for the four of them. Yeah. But so coming home for Christmas, they would stop off, play Thunder Bay, and they'd have $500 to buy Christmas presents for the folks back in Winnipeg.
Yeah, exactly.
And we benefited because we got to see them so much. And this is before they had their own songs, when they were a cover band, and the most wonderful cover band you could possibly imagine.
Well, I have an album that Randy laid on me of them doing all their covers from the old Let's Go Music Hop days.
Right.
And it's funny because they're doing White Room and it's letter perfect, except they didn't understand the 5/4. Dum da 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 dum da da dum dum da da da. They did it in 4/4. They went dum da 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 dum 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 da 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 dum 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 dum. But the song was letter perfect except for that.
That's pretty funny. It reminds me of my band. Back in Thunder Bay, and we learned, dee dee doo dee, Sunshine of Your Love.
Right.
But the drummer, still a great friend of mine, and really taught me the essence of hip. This guy back in Thunder Bay. I used to say I would check even after I got to Toronto, even after I got to New York. Rick Lazar, now a percussionist in Toronto, but I would check in with him to see what was happening up in Thunder Bay, because that's how tuned in he was before the internet. But he was too hip to play you know, the way they played that beat, which was the accent, the snare on 1 and 3.
Right.
Instead of 2 and 4, he refused and played it on 2 and 4. And of course, now he realizes that the 1 and 3 thing was the whole song, really.
Yeah.
You know?
I want to go back to your days at Fort William and stuff. So were your parents musical?
They were very musical, both of them. My father was a lawyer in Thunder Bay, not a musician by any means, and didn't play an instrument. But he had a very cool taste in music and loved the great jazz vocalists. And on Sunday, you know, when he could relax, he would put on his records of Sarah Vaughan and Sinatra and Ray Charles. In other words, my dad hipped me to Ray Charles, you know, pretty good.
Right.
I don't know. He loved the great vocalists, and Ray, of course, he had discovered him as one of them. And he loved Sam Cooke, too. He sort of followed the rock and roll that far. And my mother could play the piano, used to play when I was an infant. I have this recollection of being underneath the piano, you know, while she was playing. And then got me playing piano lessons at age 6. And then she stopped. Then she never played again.
Wait,
strangely enough.
Charles, can you pull up a picture? I got a picture of Paul really young at the piano, I believe. I'd like to get him to comment on it.
And what's the comment? You know, you can see exactly. I wish I knew what the piece was, but
How
we
old
can
are you
only
there?
imagine. Oh, I don't know exactly. I'm not exactly sure, but I started lessons at 6. So I could have been, I don't know, 10 or 8 or something. But I certainly played the Royal Conservatory music program. And as you may remember, they sent examiners up there once a year to examine all the kids, and you'd get grade 8 and I had all that kind of musical training. And then I entered the Kiwanis music festivals as a kid. Right. And maybe that was from one of those.
Okay. And so how far did you get in your grades for music?
Grade 8 piano, and then grade 2 theory and grade 3 harmony. And I think that, you could get a credit in grade 13, which they had at that time.
Right.
13. Yeah. This is how I've heard of dating yourself, but this is ridiculous.
Oh no.
So I got a credit, for some reason. And that's how far I got.
Yeah, there was still grade 13 for me.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go.
I never made it that far. I quit to go on the road.
Who were you with at that time?
Well, there was a band out of Sault Ste. Marie. It was sort of the cream of the crop, but everybody was older than me. So as each one graduated, they would leave. Well, the drummer left, went to Toronto, ended up getting in a backup band with the Fabulous Platters.
Wow, great.
Then touring around, played Guam, that sort of thing. He came back the next year and got Jeff Neal, who's now with Streetheart. Remember?
Okay, yeah.
Canadian band Streetheart. And got him. We were all from the same high school. And then Jeff leaves to go out in that same band, comes back and says, I want to get rid of these other 2 guys. I want you and Mike Sicoli to play. And so we formed this band Shama and went out on the road, and that became my career. That band was so focused on hard work and discipline, and it was just wonderful.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'm a lucky guy. Because
and still doing it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Still in show business, yes.
Yeah.
And
talk about show business. What got you into it? Like, what was the turning point for you from going to conservatory to being like a performer?
Yes. Well, again, the conservatory was just piano lessons at home with the conservatory books, their examiner and stuff. But when I went to U of T, I took sociology, and that's what you take when you don't know what the hell you're going to do. Right. With your life. And I really didn't. I thought, certainly, my dad was a lawyer, and I thought of that, but wow, I didn't, man, he works hard. And then I thought, maybe I would be some kind of professor. So I didn't know, but all I knew was I was exhausted and depressed all the time in college. First year there, I've learned to say college, down here in the States, but it was the University of Toronto.
Right.
If I had a 9 o'clock class, I'd be back in bed at 10:30. Oh, I got to go back to, I didn't know what was wrong until I started playing a little bit on the side with an avant-garde jazz player named Tasiji Munoz. He was in Toronto at the time, really a New Yorker.
Great guitar player.
Are you familiar with him?
I know the name. I don't know him as well as Lenny Bro, but I know.
Yes, yeah. Well, boy, and I through him, I had the pleasure of meeting Lenny Bro at that time and actually jamming with Lenny at one point. But this guy was cosmic like Lenny, and I'm still close to him and still make records and stuff with him. Munoz. When I started playing with him, first I started learning, stuff about the kind of music that he played, avant-garde. First standard, kind of started me on jazz standards. I learned how to play all those songs my dad used to play, by Della Reese and stuff. And then now let's just go out, basically, and I followed him into those outer musical reaches. And I started to cheer up. I didn't have to sleep anymore. Right. And it was so clear. I got to try this. Really got to try music, That was the turning point.
You're talking about your dad with jazz and stuff like that. And the first thing I flashed on, and when I listen to these albums to this day, I can't get over the quality of the vocal sound, and I don't know how they did it, but Nat King Cole's albums are just unbelievably good.
Mona Lisa, men had named you. You're so like the lady with the mystic smile.
His vocal sound is so present,
Yeah.
I don't know what microphones they use. It's just old tube compressors and preamps and all that stuff.
That's
tube
right.
mix.
And I still got him in Capitol. I think, he recorded in the Capitol building, I think in LA. Doing acoustic music though, and that's what they did at that time. Yeah. It sure helps keep things clean and clear. Yeah. Once you start working with electric guitars, as you know. Yeah. And the way they play the drums now. It involves much more.
Oh, talk about that. Something I flashed on. Sid McGuinness, when he was in the original World's Most Dangerous Band with you on Letterman.
Yeah.
Because he was with you after Hiram Bullock left, correct?
That's right, Hiram Bullock, exactly.
Hiram Bullock was so great too. So Sid McGuinness, now all of a sudden when you went over to CBS and you had the CBS orchestra with the horns and all that stuff, he started wearing headphones. Was it directly because the band was so big, or what was it?
I'll tell you exactly what it was. We went to in-ear monitors when we switched to CBS.
Okay.
Because it was, they had been invented all of a sudden.
Right.
And they were presented to me as a way, what the producers wanted, to clean up the stage. You won't have to have wedges. We don't want... So we all resisted it. But once we started using them, we found they were fantastic for so many reasons. One, you don't have to, blast yourself out by trying to get your wedge louder than the next guy's wedge, so you're not hearing his neck. But two, I could have, and the band was bigger, so I couldn't just whisper over to Anton, we're going to do Louie, Now Anton way over there. So I could have a mic, which only was heard by the other musicians.
Right.
And I could talk into that and know, and everybody would know, we're going to do Louie, key of A, and Felicia, sometimes a little younger. Right. What's that?
Right.
Just three chords, baby. I'm saying all this in the mic, right. But Sid could not work with his amplifier as a guitarist. He needed access to his amp. He could not, because the ears can cut off your acoustic vibe.
Right.
He didn't want to have, he just needed to be able to turn around if he wants feedback, get right down. Like Hendrix and used to and do his thing, and his compromise was I'll wear Walkman headphones or whatever they were called at that time, iPod headphones, and right. I'll be able to hear your voice, but I got to work with the band acoustically, and so that way he could hear my cues.
Okay, so now when you were so let's go back to the NBC. So you didn't have in-ear buds at those times. How were you getting your cues from the production room?
I tried using what they call an IFB, whatever that stands for, to hear the booth, to hear the assistant director. It was just confusing. I would just take it out. Okay. And I just learned to look at the stage manager and basically take my cues from Letterman anyway.
Right.
But, they got used to, Paul doesn't have an IFB, so I would just say, you cue me, and then I just worked that way.
Because
it was way better. Yeah, it was way, because you had to be spontaneous.
Yeah, that's the thing. That show was unbelievable. And you being such, like, you absorb so much musically. I mean, like I said, you're walking anthology. And now you're in a situation between, well, your Saturday Night Live days on top of it. But then on Letterman, you're getting to play with every one of your heroes.
It was a dream come true. And I certainly didn't take it for granted. You know, it was fantastic. Yeah. I don't know how it happened, but I was ideally positioned. And having done Saturday Night Live, which was certainly an R&B kind of band, kind of more contemporary than you were used to seeing on TV, but still written charts of 5-piece horns. Once you have 5 horns, you know you're going to have charts and stuff. And I just knew going in, this is going to be every day. I can't have to go home and write charts or, every night. What am I going to do? And I figured out, let me just play the stuff I love. And I blame it a little bit on the Guess Who coming to Fort William, too, because, as I say, they would knock me out with not a single song of their own. Even Shaken All Over was a cover.
Right.
But I didn't care, and this was sort of my head. I just did that. I said, let's play all, our Midnight Hour, like Keith Mackay, all our favorite stuff. And then the other guys in the band. Let's play my favorite stuff. Steve Jordan happened to be a big Beatles fan.
Right.
So started playing Beatles, and Hiram knew everything.
Yeah.
Crosby, Stills, and Nash. He had so many influences. So also, the 4-piece band was, of course, my favorite. It was the most flexible.
Yeah,
I just had 3 guys who knew all the songs I knew.
I loved your theme song on that B3. I mean, the horn thing, when you first went to CBS and it was the big horn, it was impressive, but I still miss that intimate B3 doing the melody.
Yeah, well, you see, I was asked to. You got to have a bigger band.
Yeah, yeah.
They didn't care how big, how I accomplished it. Just want a bigger. This is a bigger show. You can't have an intimate 4-piece thing. They impressed upon me. As opposed to at the beginning when, I don't know if you read any of those Late Show Wars books, but apparently Johnny Carson, when Letterman was first coming on and Carson controlled the time slot after him, he said, you can't have the same guests I have. Certain people you got to lay out. You can't book my favorite, whoever, Buddy Hackett, whatever. Right. Have your own guests. And that led to Letterman getting his own crazy guests. More human interest people, Brother Theodore and those crazy people he used to have. Yeah. And then they said, and you can't have you can only have 4 people in the band because we have a big band. We can't look like our show. Yeah. And perfect for me. That was how my number of guys I had at Thunder Bay, I knew exactly what to do.
And Will Lee was with you the whole time.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Well, he and I got to New York in 1974, and I was doing Broadway, but through various things, I started working in the studios pretty quickly, and that's really where I wanted to be. At that time, the coolest thing, and we all knew at that time about the Muscle Shoals rhythm section and stuff like that, and these studio musician concept of guys who they play everything, they in the morning, they don't even know what they're going to get during the day. And I was on my way to becoming that until, computers and stuff took over. But Will was a couple of years ahead of me. He was always at the top. And the first date we played together in the studio, a disco date, we just hit it off. Mm-hmm. And we've been best friends ever since.
Didn't you guys work on Barry Manilow together too?
Yes, exactly. He had been already working for Barry, at the beginning of Barry's days, and he worked for Bette Midler when Barry played for Bette. And then there was a connection, a producer named Ron Dante, who was producing Barry.
Yeah.
And I met Ron Dante through another Don Kirshner, who was at that time the legendary publisher from the Brill Building days. And then he had his own show. Anyway, one thing led to another, and Barry used me on a couple of records as a second keyboard. And it was, terrific. The first real big records I think I played on.
I saw this video. It might have popped up from Will Lee. He might have posted it actually, and it's because I saw Donald Fagen, Asia, and I look and there's Will Lee. I can see him playing bass. And I look over on the left, and you're playing keyboards with Donald Fagen doing Asia, and good Lord, and that was with he was actually doing the drums.
Steve Gadd, yes.
Steve Gadd, yeah.
I know, the great, who played the Asia solo.
Oh, I know.
Well, this is a thing from Will. Will, year after year, has been the conductor on this charity show called Love Rocks. Now, for an organization, God's Love We Deliver, they bring food to invalids and people. A wonderful charity. A huge rock show at the Beacon. And Will Lee with a big band, and I did it for 3 years. But truthfully, there's so much music, and so I demoted myself. I did a little hosting and sitting in a little bit the last time. But Will, just 3-4 solid hours of all these stars, and his band is all star too. Complimented me by having me on one keyboard, but his other keyboard player was great, Jeff Young. Oh, somebody, wait a minute, and decline. Yeah, you got to somehow you got to put it on airplane mode. I don't know how to do that. But what was I saying? Will has this super band with Steve Gadd and the great Sean Pelton, two terrific drummers. Right. Greatest I've ever heard two drummers playing together, because that can be a mess. Yeah, it can be. Sure you know. And this one year, it was
the kick drums are out of sync. It sounds like hell.
But these two guys were listening to each other. They weren't duplicating each other, and it was really terrific. And that Asia was a high point, because Gadd played that incredible solo almost note for note.
I don't know if you recall, but when we did the Roseland Ballroom with Bachman and Turner, I think when I did my segment with you, I was on guitar, but I used to double on an 8-string bass, and Fred would play bass and I'd be playing 8-string. It was like Big Bottom all of a sudden,
Yes,
it was.
I see.
But that was the thing, is that a lot of times I would hold the eighth notes, the dun 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 stuff, while Fred was able to wander if he wanted to, and literally the soundman could mix or match whatever bass he wanted to use.
Yeah, well, I guess you part of what gave him that monstrous sound. Now you're giving away all the secrets. I mean, I'm writing it down. 8-string bass. Of course, the great Phil Spector.
Yeah, one of your heroes.
Controversial character, of course, and died in jail.
Yeah.
But one of his groundbreaking things was that, the two basses, he would use one upright and one electric. Well, and sometimes a 6-string, an octave higher too.
I got it. Okay, so you've moved to Toronto and you start working in Godspell. This is where you meet the people that become the Not Ready for Primetime Players, which becomes Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, well, a number.
And how did you get the actual? You got the band gig. What was his name? Howard Shore was the band leader for Saturday Night Live. He was
the band leader,
and he was from Lighthouse.
That's right. He was from Lighthouse.
The band Lighthouse for Canadian band.
Yeah. Now, of course, the crowd that Godspell, the crowd of actors that I met, Gilda Radner went on to the Saturday Night Live Not Ready for Primetime Players.
Right.
Dan Aykroyd too. He hadn't been in Godspell, but they became the Second City nightclub performers, right. And then they had, which became SCTV.
Yeah.
That wonderful show.
Yeah, amazing.
And on the same album,
I won't take just any girl around, 'cause Patsy has the largest breasts in town.
Yes, Patsy has the largest breasts in town.
Yeah, all done in Canada with Canadians. And then, but I was in New York. I had been brought into town by the composer of Godspell, Steve Schwartz, who liked the way I played the stuff in Toronto and got me my first permit to come to the U.S. And I was playing on Broadway for him in the Magic Show, coincidentally with the Canadian magician, Doug Henning. This was his Broadway debut, and it was a smash. He was a magician, not like the old-fashioned guy with the top hat and cape, but, a hippie guy with a mustache and a jumpsuit, and it was all very 70s.
Yeah.
But before I left Toronto, I did one more show. I was in theater after I did Godspell. I got some other calls, do some shows, and I met Howard Shore, straight out of Lighthouse, starting to do, gigs here and there. And he and I hit it off. And so when he came down to put the band together for SNL, he called me up. I was already in town doing Doug Henning's show, and I switched over, and that's how that happened. Well, so I was never the band leader or musical director. He was.
I was just going to say that. And a lot of people think you were the musical director, but you weren't.
Well,
I guess because you were more visible or something, and you had the glass.
I made myself a little visible.
Yeah.
And Howard was doing the opposite. He really didn't want to, be the stereotypical conductor. We were all trying to break these old-fashioned showbiz stereotypes, and he didn't want to be a stereotypical conductor like Benny Goodman out front of the band or something. Right. He was trying everything. Once he even brought an antique desk, and while we were playing, he'd be sort of sitting at the desk, and anything not to be, And I was the opposite, and I loved Elton John so much that I had a pair of glasses just like his, right, and used to wear his trademark, which I don't know, you shouldn't really do that, but it worked for me too, and it was just a tribute to Elton. Well, but sometimes you'd see those white glasses in a shot sometimes.
Didn't you actually have a pair of glasses that were made by the same manufacturer as him?
Well, yes, again, a long story, but when I started mentioning Don Kirshner, I did a TV pilot and in fact a summer series for him. And that's why I started doing an impression of him that I used to do on Saturday Night Live when I came back to that show. But while in Hollywood doing this crazy sitcom, kind of a monkey's thing, a show about a band, they said, well, you need some flashy glasses for the musical number at the end. Let's go down, on Sunset where Elton gets his glasses, and the place was called Optique Boutique.
Okay.
The year 1977. And the woman actually said, I've got Elton's next pair. Would you like to see them? Oh, of course. And she brought out those iconic square ones with lenses this thick,
Okay.
His lenses. And I said, I'll take a pair of those. And it was that simple. I'm not proud of it. It was his, I don't know what you could liken it to, but
but he was doing Liberace. Everybody borrows from everybody, right?
Thanks for putting it that way. It's true.
Yeah.
It's actually true. But what a musician he is. Underrated.
Oh, unbelievable. He's a great piano. That's what Billy Joel said. He said the one thing people don't realize is how great a piano player Elton John actually is.
Yeah, he sure is.
And he loves to play.
So advanced. And he was into gospel rock and gospel real early, late 60s, when that first record came out, may not have been his actual first, but the one with Your Song.
Yeah.
I mean, he was playing his ass off in a gospel kind of frame of mind that nobody else was doing. Maybe Leon Russell, and he does cite Leon as a big influence.
Do you remember Doug Edwards? You're familiar with the name? He's the guy that wrote Wildflower for Skylark, David Foster's
I know the
band?
song. I know the song.
Yeah, a beautiful song. Yeah.
And I don't know who Doug Edwards is. Was he in the band?
Yes, he was the bass player that wrote it. Yeah.
Okay.
It was actually him and a police officer from Victoria here who wrote the lyrics. And he gave the lyrics to Doug. Doug wrote the music, presented to the band. David Foster's first big production, and it's gone on. It still gets airplay. One of those classic songs. Amazing. But anyway, Doug Edwards was at the Troubadour when Elton played. He said it was the best rock trio he's ever seen in his life. He couldn't believe how good it was. That was before they had a guitar player.
I'm sure it was. I mean, history. I was listening just coincidentally. I guess maybe there was an anniversary of that album or the live album that they cut at the studio in New York after that. But it was their act, just the three of them. And they're just playing, with all the youthful energy where you got 250% to give, and they're giving it. And they're singing, the keys are in the stratosphere. They're so young and singing so high.
Yeah,
all of them, the background vocals too, they were high.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Well, I remember seeing Elton John talking about, because he was such a Leon Russell fan. And of course, there he is at the Troubadour doing his big debut in Hollywood, and he looks out in the crowd and there's Leon Russell. And he didn't know what to do. He was just in shock. It'd be like me playing in a club, because the Troubadour is so tiny, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'd be like me playing in a small club and seeing Paul McCartney in front of me or something. You know, I don't know how I'd open my mouth, you know?
I know it is amazing that he got to do that.
Yeah.
And when that happens, I don't know. I've had some surreal moment, you know, just kind of getting taken back to playing, you know, and Ray Charles is right in the room, you know.
No kidding.
Way back when he hosted SNL. Ray Charles hosted SNL in the 70s.
Yeah.
And the house band played with him on a couple of numbers, and he really, you know, somehow I was in the position of having to play soul organ licks behind Ray Charles, and I was scared to death, you know.
Oh, wow.
And he stopped the whole band, and he said, "Organ." He called me organ, you know, and he said, "Play it with some soul." And I'm saying, "Oh my God, you know what?" Somehow I got through that, and he, you know, by the end of it, he was nice to me. But man, imagine that. Being put on that kind of spot.
I heard notoriously that he really felt behind the beat. Like he was a real, like he could have a song playing so slow, and he didn't want you to vary from that. It'd be so slow it was almost abnormal, but it was cooking out front. But you know, in the band, it's so hard to feel that slow and have energy, you know?
Well, certainly that's true. And I'll also tell you that because after that initial time, I got to play with him a number of times. A wonderful special in New Orleans called Fats and Friends with him, Fats Domino, Jerry Lee Lewis. And then he did Letterman a few times.
Yeah.
And I don't remember who it was who told me simply the secret. Maybe it was back on Saturday Night Live. Make sure the drummer can see his feet. It's as simple as that, because he will change the tempo too, but he is dictating what he wants with his feet. You know, left foot being the snare, boom, boom, bam. And he may want to raise the tempo on the bridge. He might not realize it himself, you know, and then he'd accuse the drummer, "You're dragging, man, you're dragging," you know, because but just watch his feet was the whole secret of playing with Ray Charles.
So he was conducting with his feet. That was his baton.
Yes.
Amazing.
And that's right. And he would change the tempo that way too.
Wow.
And some of them were, just like you said, so slow that by the time he come over, you know, but the only way to do it is if the drummer can see his feet.
Wow, that's
and
really
I remember, you know, at Letterman time once when we were in Los Angeles, he did it, and we had to just stop, you know, and I hold it, you know, the piano's in the wrong place. The drummer's got to see it. Well, we want the lighting. I say, no, and I'm telling you, you can't. It's not the lighting. We won't be able to play with him. You gotta, unless we have, you know, and I had to do that. And eventually I got them to move the piano around.
That's good. I gotta talk you're still really good friends with Bill Murray. You must be.
Yes.
Because you guys, I mean, those what was it, Nick Rails or Nick? What was the character? He was always Nick. The lounge singer. That was the best skit ever.
He was Nick, whoever was appropriate, whether it was Nick Rails on the train, bar, car, or Nick Winters up in the ski resort, you know, and I was a part of a team of about 5 writers who would put these things together, led by him, of course, just coming up with stuff. Danny was always a guy who worked on at the ski lodge, who found a dead animal in the ski lift, in the motor, and that was every year that was the same. I mean, every episode. But the main thing was the songs, like when he did Star Wars and stuff.
Yeah.
That was just all Bill, whatever he wanted to do. He would get a crazy idea.
He did the best mock crooner stuff. But what I found remarkable, I was listening to your Most Dangerous Band album. Yeah. And he does a vocal on there that's really good.
Yeah. Well, he loves music, and even more impressive than that is he's been doing a thing. Well, nobody's doing any concerts anymore, but before the quarantine, he had a sort of a semi-classical evening. He teamed up with a classical cellist, and they had a cello and two violin, viola, I think, and pianist. And he was doing classical pieces and some, crossover, a little bit of pop, but with a very classical attitude. And only he, and pulling it off.
Wow.
Pulling it off.
Well, he's notoriously hard to get a hold of, apparently. This is like,
yes.
He's one of these evasive kind of guys. Like, it's amazing he's still a star almost, because it's hard to find him sometimes.
It sure does speak to how talented he is, because I've heard this. Well, the same thing, even those of us who have his number don't really have it. But apparently, his big Oscar-nominated role with Sofia Coppola, she couldn't get him. She couldn't find him for, a whole year, I think. Wow. And almost gave up. And then somebody managed to put him. But that, was such a big success.
What do you attribute to that? Knowing that you know him well enough.
Just got to be his own man. You got to be his own man. That's all. Got to live his own life. Wow.
Rob Reiner directed it, but who came up with the concept of Spinal Tap? Do you remember?
I can only say that as far as I know, the three guys in it, who were the three leads in it, Mike McKeon, Christopher Guest, and Harry Shearer, and Rob Reiner, the director.
Right.
All four of them great pals anyway.
Oh, okay.
Known each other in Hollywood for years. Harry and McKeon were in a comedy group that made records called The Credibility Gap. And Chris, one of the funniest guys. I don't know what else to say, but somehow in sitting around, the four of them developed this thing. And they always used to say, Rob became the director because he couldn't fit into the spandex pants. Otherwise, he would have been in it. And they all, they were all sort of co-creators of it.
And your part, your Artie Fufkin was just such an iconic part. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously based on several people.
Exactly.
You can't really name one of them, but you can kind of, it was.
When I said Harry was really the one who got me into it, into the movie. Harry it was around just after the time when Harry had done one of his stints on SNL, and he and I became fast friends. He talked him into using me as a promo man. And when I said to him, well, so you'll send me my lines? And he said, well, you'll be making them up. And sure enough, it was like that. There were only scene outlines, no script, no lines. Just we knew you had to get from point A to point B, go, and then you'd kind of be saying things. Not true improv, because sometimes people would plan the night before what they were going to say. People almost breaking up.
Yeah, almost like Larry David's show,
It was exactly like that. And it set the mold, I think, for those kind of shows. Yeah. But yeah, it gives it a weird kind of real feeling to it. And so I had to do that too and come up with backstories. First of all, I had to learn who everybody was, all the names of their characters, which wasn't easy. And then the people at the label, Sir Dennis, somebody or other, and then I had to just talk. And as far as an actor, I really could only do the one thing, that impression of Don Kirshner that I picked up from work.
I was going to say that. I was trying not to say it.
Well, that's all I could do, So I did that voice as if he were a promo man. And then from real promo guys, I filled in some of the authentic, terminology.
Yeah.
And I had a character. All of that stuff. And that was so big at the time.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Those guys actually did play too.
Yes, they did play.
Yeah. And Harry Shearer, of course, has gone on to Simpsons. Has been such a huge hit for him. He's does so many voices. My gosh.
Does all the voices that aren't the family members.
Yeah.
And he spends a lot of time in New Orleans now, Harry, where he has a place, and he's become a sort of a New Orleans musical guru.
Really?
I'm not sure how it happened, but he has more knowledge about the New Orleans scene all of a sudden than almost anybody else.
I've been to New Orleans a couple of times, and my greatest success on seeing authentic music was always during the day. At night, night I might as well have been in downtown Vancouver, you know?
Uh-huh.
But because it was the same, you go in and you see these rock bands playing cover material, you weren't seeing what I wanted to see. In the afternoons, that's when you saw the real guys come out, you know? Even the street entertainment was amazing.
That's right. And it seems like everybody can play a great New Orleans piano there.
Yeah.
No matter who it is.
Well,
you know?
that's like the old line in Nashville. It's like you're in a coffee shop and somebody says, and the waitress walks up, "Yeah, can I get you a refill on your coffee? And you want some help with your third verse?"
Exactly. Yeah.
Everybody's in the music business in Nashville, you know.
It was just like that. Sure, it's true.
Unbelievable. So, okay, so now where's the bridge happen between Saturday Night Live and all the thing, and you were doing skits on Saturday Night Live and stuff. You became much more than just a musician on that show. You became part of the troupe.
By the 5th season, I was what they called a featured player, which is like a supporting actor. You get to be, you know, in a certain number of episodes. And I don't know, I certainly wanted to get on camera, and I must give it up to the guys and gals in Godspell. Back in Toronto in 1972, my first experience of a group of people that were so funny that I said to myself, I want to be more like them.
Yeah.
They seem to be having more fun than I am.
Yeah, just
and I don't know, they just, that influence, you know, certainly did just rub off on me.
Well, like, and you touched on it, the Godspell thing basically spawned Saturday Night Live and SCTV.
And SCTV, I know.
Unbelievable.
I think so too.
What comedic geniuses.
And this guy, Stephen Schwartz, who now, well, I say again, before the quarantine, Wicked is his show. Maybe the longest running show on Broadway now, I think. But at the time,
wow.
Him, yeah. But at the time he was 24 or 5. And he came up to Toronto to do those final auditions and just picked all these incredible people and hired me. I was there to accompany a couple of people who were auditioning. And he said, yeah, I like that, you know, let me talk to that piano player. And by the end of the day, he had hired me for the show. I don't know how, you know, blessing. That's all I can say, a blessing.
And Gilda just seemed like everybody's sweetheart. Nobody has a bad thing to say about Gilda Radner.
That's right. And nor did she ever do a single thing that was anything but sterling and beautiful. She was a lovely friend.
Yeah.
And a loyal friend to the end.
Did you get to know Gene Wilder well? I imagine you must have.
No, because when she started going with Gene, he sort of, and maybe for her own good, you know, kind of took her out of the old scene, which may not have been doing her. You know, she was drinking tab and too many tabs and sometimes pouring vodka in and stuff. And a lot of us didn't see her for a while.
Okay.
And I think, you know, it was what she needed at the time.
Yeah, well, look what happened to Belushi. You know,
I know
it was pretty tragic what was going on. Luckily, I don't think Aykroyd had the same sort of internal, like a penchant or whatever you call it, to move in that direction. Belushi was all in all the time. You could just tell.
Well, he sure was, and that's, you know, such a sad ending and too early. But man, those, you know, the stars are certainly all in. We learned that. And hopefully they learn to take care of themselves too. Well,
that brings me to the Blues Brothers. Now, in the Blues Brothers, you guys started that on Saturday Night Live as a skit, correct?
Yeah. I would say they got on. First of all, they started, you know, they had both been in bands in high school. Belushi, I think, is a drummer. Where he grew up outside of Chicago, and Aykroyd playing the blues harp in Hull, Quebec, or wherever it was exactly he's from. I can't quite remember, but the Downchild Blues Band being a huge influence on him.
Okay.
And I think he was always kind of maybe had this idea that he and John John could sing pretty well, and I could play this harp, and maybe, you know, things developed. Hey, we could put on, you know, shades and hats and be like the old junkies that Belushi heard about back in Chicago, who tried to look so straight. You know, they were wearing straight hats and suits, but they were so obvious they were giving themselves away. Yeah. And that was part of it. And they started doing this to warm up the audience on SNL, like, which was going to go on the air at 11:30. So at 11:15, you know, the announcer, hey, how's everybody feel? You know, feel like some blues? Here's, you know, and introduce them. And they would just come, just for the studio audience, come out and do a few songs.
Wow.
And then they did it on TV. They figured out, well, if we dress up like the running gag at the time, which was people dressing as bees, bumblebees.
Yeah, that's right. Because they I remember, I was just going to bring that up. I thought I remember them doing some music like that, dressed as bees.
And they did, I'm a king bee, baby. You know, I think that was
right.
Belushi's idea, dressed as bees. And that's how they got on the camera. And like that, they got signed to Atlantic Records.
Wow.
And away they went. And they hired me to put the band together for them.
And that first album was great.
It was unstoppable. The guys were hot as hell, of course, from Saturday Night Live, and talented as all heck. And like we were saying about Elton and his band, just at that, you know, peak time when they're giving their all, and everybody wanted to play for them. We could have had absolutely anyone.
Oh yeah, Donald Duck Dunn and oh God, who else was in that band?
And Steve Cropper, of course.
Steve Cropper, of course, yeah.
And Matt Guitar Murphy, a wonderful, you know, Chicago-style blues player,
but
who had played with the greats.
It was such a renaissance for them too. Of course, they'd want to be part of it.
I didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah.
But yes, it did. It did kind of bring them back. A renaissance for them.
And that was. Yeah, that album, and you know what, Belushi, Dan Aykroyd's Rubber Biscuit always blew my mind. That I don't know how he did that phonetic sound, but man, was that incredible.
What do you want for nothing? Rubber biscuit? Ow, ow.
He showed off, you know, finding that song, being aware of it, being able to do it. I have to slow it down.
Do that, you know?
Well, I can't do it. I can't even do it at half the speed.
A friend of mine, a country artist. A friend of mine is a country artist up here. He does it really, really well. He nails it. He actually studied it phonetically. It's almost, he says, I had to study it like it was another language.
Well, I hope that we were right we were doing it phonetically too. Annie and you know, and I was kind of around too. Some of the phrases we feel started with the syllable Z-U-L, Zul. So ask your friend if there's any Zul, because I think there are.
I have to. I haven't talked to him for a while. He moved to Banff, so I was going to say, and Aykroyd's harp playing was really good.
He can play. He can play. And that first album, and this is before there was any such thing as auto-tune.
Yeah.
Or digital, you know.
Yeah.
This was a 24-track tape.
Yeah.
Cutting between nights. I think we had 9 nights at the Universal Amphitheater live, opening for Steve Martin. By his graces, he said, you know, you guys can open, sure.
Wow.
And they really stepped up with this incredible band. And then what you heard was absolutely what everybody was playing and singing.
And Steve Martin was filling stadiums in those days. You know, he was so huge.
Yeah. So he filled 9 nights in Hollywood. I mean, nobody knew that the Blues Brothers would score like they did. But that's where they recorded that first album.
Really? So that was, wow, I did not
live
know that.
Album, yes, live album.
I didn't know that it was, but I didn't realize it was backing up Steve Martin.
It was opening for him, yes.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. So so we got Godspell, we got, I'm trying to bridge where you go from Saturday Night Live to David Letterman? Where, like, because Letterman started with an afternoon talk show that didn't spin. Were you part of that?
It was in the morning, actually.
Oh, morning, yeah.
And it was the very definition of too hip for the room, I think. It was live in the morning. And it was the first year after I had left SNL. I had done the first 5 years on piano and then a little bit of performing and such, writing. And then everybody was just leaving. You know, Lorne Michaels, the producer, was leaving. Right. He eventually came back and, you know, and is still doing it today. But at the time, he left for a while. And everyone left, all his people left with him. And I left too. I wasn't going to stay and start again with a new group, you know. And I was just doing freelance stuff, studio work and such. And when that morning show, David Letterman, I did get called for it. And David likes to make a running gag out of himself. He used to say on the show, "Now, Paul, you didn't do the morning show, right?" "No, David." "Why not?" "Couldn't get up that early." But really, I think it was just, you know, having done 5 years, it just didn't seem right. And the morning, you know, I didn't see it. And maybe I was right in that they were just so clever and inventive, and it was too much for that hour of the morning. But somehow, lucky for me, the network still had faith in Dave. And the next thing, they gave him a show in the evening, even later than Johnny Carson. It was going to come on at 12:30 at night. Right. And somehow they called me again, and I said, "Well, that, you know, that's more like it." Even later than Johnny Carson, signed me up, and so I did.
Well, Carson used to do, not many people remember this, he used to do a 90-minute show every night. It wasn't an hour, it was 90 minutes. So when I guess I'm assuming when he cut back to an hour, all they had to do was take that additional 30 minutes that he gave up, add another 30 minutes, and they have 2 shows now.
I guess, yeah. Well, first a guy named Tom Snyder would come on.
Right. Oh, right. Of course.
Smoking, heavily smoke. And of course, very intimate, all dark, and just a one-on-one for an hour. And then Letterman replaced him with our show.
And of course, Aquay did a great Tom Snyder too. Nailed him.
Did. That's right.
Oh man! Oh, I used to love the Tom Snyder show. I forgot all about that. That was on first. That's right. But that was on at let's see. If Carson went on 11:30, so yeah, he was
coming on 12:30. No, I think it was when he went to an hour. That's when Tom Snyder started. I don't know. It's so ancient history now.
I know. Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, I know. We're going a long way back. So anyway, so now, how do you get the call to do? You get the call to do the band with David. Was that David's choice at that point, or was that NBC? Or
no, David. He you know, in both cases, he asked them to call me, come in for a meeting.
And how did he know about you?
He mentioned that he had seen me on Saturday Night Live, and in fact mentioned those Bill Murray lounge singer sketches, that he had noticed me in those and stuff. And of
course, he loves Bill Murray too. I mean, that's his first guest. Does. Yeah, that's his first guest on everything. You know,
that's right. It was, yeah. So that's what he said. You know, he just had an idea that I would be right for it, and he claims he never had anybody else in mind. I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, that's nice.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
And you guys continue to have a good relationship to this day.
Yeah. David and I still speak quite a bit.
Did you not write the theme for his new show as well?
That's right. It was so nice of him. He asked me to write the theme for the show he does on Netflix now.
Yeah, which I love.
Yes, it's a hell of a show, and some of them have been quite incredible because it's all one, sort of like Tom Snyder-esque, one except in front of an audience, and then they go out and do things in the field that relate to the interview and stuff. They illustrate stuff and they show you stuff.
I remember him talking to Jerry Seinfeld about being jealous about comedians in cars drinking coffee or whatever.
Okay, that's right. You follow. You seem to follow this stuff a little bit.
Oh, I'm a comedy groupie. Absolutely.
I see that. So, yeah, that's right. That's right. He did like that.
Yeah. And so he and I think what he liked about it, and of course, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee was very, very early. Podcasts were just starting where people would do an interview like this, where you're talking about life and going on and on. And that was the thing. He would pick them up in a car and they'd sit around and yak about stuff and make a show out of it. And I remember David saying that was so great because on a TV show, you've got your, 5 minutes for your guest. You got to crunch it all in. You got your blue card telling you what to say, what to ask. You're not really getting an intimate conversation. And so he was trying to figure a way to do what Jerry was doing. And that's why the Netflix thing, I'm sure, appealed to him.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Well, you know all this stuff. You don't need me to answer this question. You seem to know it all. You do. Quite impressive.
Well, thanks. I don't want to step on your toes, but Eugene Levy, going back to that, you were guest star on Schitt's Creek too. That's
right.
Yeah.
And I'm told I was the only. The shows, they're done now. They've had seven or eight wonderfully successful episodes. But apparently, I'm the only one who appeared on the show and played myself in the whole series.
Is that right?
Yeah. So that's a sort of an accomplishment, I think.
You must have been so proud of Eugene for winning all those Emmys, man.
And his son Daniel.
Yeah, Daniel, what a talent!
Who runs the show? And now, especially when I noticed that he's going to host Saturday Night Live, Daniel Levy.
Oh,
and what a fantastic thing that is.
Yeah.
And when we think back to when he was born and stuff.
Yeah, full circle, huh?
Yeah. That's pretty nice. Very nice.
Unbelievable. So, okay, so let's go Post-Letterman now. So Post-Letterman, you get a record deal of all things, and you do that album, The World's Most Dangerous Band, the album.
Yeah, it's a sort of a goodbye to my old band from all those years on Letterman. That band recording together, and guest stars like Dion, one of my favorites, Dion DiMucci, The Wanderer.
Yeah,
and I can barely remember who else.
Yeah, there's quite a few guest stars on there, but the one that really rocked my world was Bill Murray, just because he got to be the personification of what he was caricaturizing back in Saturday Night Live. He actually became a singer on that album, to me.
Well, I suppose that's true. Yeah, and nice of you to put it that way. I think he was happy with his work on it too. Took it seriously, worked hard. We went down to South Carolina, where he was at the time, and recorded him down there.
Is that right? Eh? Oh, that's so great. That's awesome.
So obviously with what's happening with COVID and all that, life is sort of quieted down quite a bit for the entertainment industry and all that. But what have you been working on during all this time?
Well, not too much because there isn't too much going on. I was just getting into a new phase, symphony work. I had done my first symphony show with the Michigan the symphony in, I'm blanking now, but it's in Michigan, a wonderful orchestra, where they have the Gibson factory and the Kellogg's factory. Where is it? Where they have Kellogg's?
Oh, Battle Creek.
Yeah, no. Oh, you're right. Battle Creek. This is near Battle Creek. Kellogg's is one of their sponsors. Anyway, a wonderful show where I got to do all my favorite symphonic-esque type of pop and R&B. And I had bookings. I was going to play Winnipeg, as a matter of fact. I was talking to the Vancouver Symphony. I had Long Beach going, and I'm very much looking forward to that. Wow. And hope, don't know how it's going to happen that, that there might be symphonic shows. Because when you've got a full, they had 70 pieces, almost 70 pieces up in Michigan. That's already you're a COVID, you're in trouble. So I don't know how that's going to happen. Otherwise, I'm practicing the piano and trying to stay ready. What
about your Paul Shaffer +1 show? Because I love that. That's you doing what Letterman's doing. You're taking a musician and you're talking songs. You're talking music.
Basically, what happened was I did about 9 of them. I'm very proud of them. Not only did I do Donald Fagen, just the two of us talking and playing, but Smokey Robinson. I did an episode where you're talking about my favorite. Joe Walsh. My goodness, wonderful people.
Billy Gibbons.
Billy Gibbons, terrific. and the network changed hands. Somebody else bought it.
Oh no!
And they said we got too many interview shows, and that was the end of that.
Oh,
I said,
no.
but mine is more of it, you know. Anyway, that's what happened.
Yeah,
I still holding my hopes up that I might be able to do it somewhere else. Maybe I certainly went inside. I didn't care. You know, I asked very musical questions that I'm glad that you liked, but I could see where, you know, an average viewer might say, well, what is he talking? He's lost me now, you know.
We'll talk off camera. We might have an idea for you.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, okay. But I was going to say, I have to ask this. One of our guys on the show, David, he's not with us today because he has another shoot he has to do, but he is a Rush freak. And of course, he said that there was drumming week when New York Peart came on and closed the show. And he wanted me to ask what was that like and what's your experiences with Neil Peart?
Well, I don't think I had met him before that time. My son, who's now 22, and he's a fourth-year student at UPenn. So proud of him. Wow. But at the time, he was in high school and he was drumming. He was a drummer. Okay. And he was into classic rock. He took, there actually is an organization called School of Rock, which was fantastic. He took drum lessons. They taught him how to read. And they taught him the classical, you know, what was what in the world of classic rock. And they said, you know, you should, if you have an opportunity to catch Neil Peart, you better catch him. By the way, is it Peart? Peart?
I know. I always thought it was Peart, but I've heard people say Peart, so I was trying.
It's Peart.
Maybe in Canada. Yeah,
it is Peart.
Where they know, yeah. Well, that is what I said. Anyway, so my son came down with him. Maybe he'll get a chance to meet him. But the vibe was, I mean, Rush, I guess, so massive that we got sort of their standard rider, and it says you don't talk to Neil. You don't interfere with him, let him do his thing, you know, and nobody gets to meet him. So I said, well, you know, well, okay.
On the Letterman show?
Yeah. This is what it was. Like, as I say, probably their standard rider.
Right.
But whatever it was, my son and I waited patiently while he went through a couple of times just solo. And he was using, you know, a regular kit, very expansive, of course, and then an electric kit behind him, and the whole thing would spin around. He brought all of this, right? I guess from the Rush setup, right? And we watched, and you know, and he got it down. He was, you know, he was so concentrated. And as soon as they broke, he came right over to me and my son, and he sat down with us, and he just gave as much time as we needed, you know. So that's my son never more impressed than that, and So he was a terrific guy and so respected among the international drumming community. Well, one of the greats, obviously.
And so, what you said your son was 4 years. What is he taking? What's his major?
He pre-med. He hopes to get into medicine. And I say, where did I go wrong? I want him to be a degenerate jazz musician like his old man.
And what about your daughter? She's the older one, correct?
Yeah, I mean, Victoria's living in Hollywood and very much into dog rescue and sheltering. She is working with an organization called Mutt Scouts, where they shelter dogs. They find wounded animals, litters, and
what's the name of that?
Get them adopted. Mutt Scouts. Mutt, like a M-U-T-T. Mutt Scouts, yeah.
I'll tell you why. Because we just rescued a dog from Mexico. We just got Jenny on December 19th, and I'm always looking to find out how to deal with this. She's a wonderful, beautiful little dog, but there's little idiosyncrasies that I'm trying to figure out how to get around. You know,
my daughter's an expert now. She can advise you. That's what Mutt Scouts. A lot of adopting from Mexico, actually, a lot of fostering, I should say, rescuing, fostering, and then adopting.
Well, that's what it is. We fostered Jenny for a month, and we finally she became ours about a week ago.
So, good for you. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's great. I have to look that up.
I'm just curious, how did you come to be featured on The Simpsons? I saw there was one episode in particular that I know they said it was the birthplace of Paul Shaffer. It was Toronto when it's really Thunder Bay, but nevertheless, they featured you on the show. So I was curious.
Well, first of all, I've got to say that they were right. I was born in Mount Sinai Hospital in Toronto.
Oh, right on. Okay.
Yes, and then I was in Toronto just to get born, and then raised in Thunder Bay. But on my birth certificate it does say Toronto. Okay. And I don't know how the rest of it happened exactly. All I know is that so many things. We had to do something. It had to do with their couch moment. I think at the beginning they always have a running thing. Everybody ends up on the couch, and that's all I can remember.
Absolutely.
Randy and Fred had their moment with The Simpsons too, which was great.
I'm sure. Well, they're icons.
Yeah, they're playing a festival with BTO, and Homer's out in the audience yelling, "No new crap, taking care of business now." Which is what you hear everywhere.
Story of your life, I'm sure. Being
absolutely 20 years of that, my friend. I should probably mention your book.
Well, that's nice of you.
Yeah,
this book
will be here for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, I read it about 10 years ago.
Yeah,
at least, but certainly still downloadable and stuff, and very much an honest account of growing up in Thunder Bay, seeing the Guess Who, becoming tuning into American radio stations after dark, and then moving through all the stuff we just talked about. You don't have to write them. You don't have to download the book. We just talked about everything.
Well, Paul, thank you very much for your time. I know you have to run. This is absolutely incredible, but I'm going to. I'll write you through Olivia.
Yes.
Because there's something I want to talk to you about regarding your show.
Okay. Wonderful.
Okay. Great.
All righty. Awesome. It was a pleasure being with you and all the guys. Hi, everybody, and bye.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Paul. We'd love to have you back. It's been a fantastic show.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Check out our many other episodes and vignettes for more great content. And please like, share, and subscribe, and become a member at SocialNRGPresents.com to access all our content and earn valuable energy points just for watching.